Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Zone of Interest. This is a very impactful, interesting art movie that is also about fascism and anxiety and the idea of being complicit in the very tragedies of humanity that go on right out of our viewpoint. It is a difficult movie. I think both as a viewer, it's like basically an art movie in a lot of the sense. There's almost all wide shots. I don't think there's even a medium in it. Maybe there is, but I wouldn't describe it or a close-up whatsoever. It is a truly interesting, thought-provoking, and scary and kind of contemplative film, more so than I've ever seen someone do with a World War II film or a Holocaust film. I think this is a Holocaust film, but I guess Holocaust is part of World War II. About this is actually a real life thing. It's not sort of a put upon stage thing or like don't you feel complicit sort of thing. It really happened. Kind of one of the main guys who's really good at running Auschwitz, the Nazis felt that, I guess. Rudolf Höss, who had a family right next to Auschwitz, who lived in a house and had this sort of idyllic, wonderful life while going to work on a horse and then going and keeping Auschwitz running as the concentration camp it was. And this film does not show you Auschwitz. I guess it shows you that location, but not the concentration camp. And you hear it the entire movie. You hear what's going on. You hear gunshots. You hear dogs barking. You hear people pleading for their lives. You hear the sounds you've heard in countless films from concentration camps right beyond their house. And the idea that one of the people who the Nazis felt was very good at running concentration camps to the point where he was going to be moved to show all of them, and talked about his efficiency in killing people, lived this wonderful life with his wife and children, and was able to do so by the vast mass genocide of Jewish people, and who the Nazis deemed unfit to keep living. I had an interesting thing while watching this, because I do feel like, I have a family, and I live in the times that are now, which are not obviously not as bad as the Holocaust, but are not great either. I do often feel like a major thing will happen, and I'm a little more concerned with my daughter's, getting to dance class or getting to work or making sure we have enough snacks for the week or something like that. And I've often felt like things like either from Israel and Palestine to Roe v. Wade being overturned, even though I've read the news, I pretty much read it as it happens, I'm taking it in, but it doesn't hit me for a few days, and I feel like sort of bad and complicit to a certain degree. And I do think this film brings that up and makes you doubt yourself. And I don't think it's like one of those like fragility things. I think there are certain things that are going on and you wish you could do something. Maybe you can, and maybe the huge overbearingness of fascism is impossible to really take down. But I think you should feel bad that these things are going on. Obviously, you should feel bad about that, and I think this film makes you think about that. But this film is not about me making sure I have snacks. I didn't overturn Roe v. Wade. I didn't do the Holocaust. I had nothing to do with what happened with Israel and Palestine. This is about the guy who literally was one of the architects of Auschwitz. Like he's not like, some normal guy ignoring the newspaper that day. He is directly responsible. He even tells his wife in a certain scene, played by Sandra Huller, about how when he was in a room with people, how he thought of all the ways he could kill all of them. Like, it is at a party, basically. He sounds a super chill guy. It is basically like the rich, the people who are profiting from these horrible things, who are getting, their vacation, their amazing family home, their kids have amazing snacks and go to the best schools and all those things, and what they have to do and the sacrifices they're taking from all of humanity to get there. And yeah, you could say maybe spending too much money at Starbucks is part of it. But at the same point, that's not what this film is about. It is about the rich people who do these horrible things and are able to succeed and be rich and be wealthy and be well off because of it. And seeing their both complicity and like there's a scene where Sandra Huller is putting on a coat that is very obviously because Auschwitz is right there. You can kind of figure it out where they got the coat. And she's going through it by herself and she finds lipstick in the pocket and she's like putting on the lipstick, and you're like, that woman is either getting her head shaved now and crying that her family's being killed in front of her, or is just been gassed immediately, or she's at a fucking concentration camp. Nothing good is happening to the woman whose coat that was. There's another scene where her mother comes and she's showing off her house, and I like designed this out, and it's like a wonderful house, but how she designed the pool and all the garden and all these things. And she's telling her mom and talking about how they knew this Jewish woman and they loved her drapes and her coats and like all the things in her house, and how they have all these memories, and how they were also sad that they weren't there when they auctioned off her drapes and her house and stuff. Nothing about like, oh, that sucks that she died. Like, they can't even do what I just did, which is pretty which is like a fucked up joke, but at the same time, like, they can't even rustle up that amount of humanity. They're like, oh, I mean, her drapes are wonderful. It's too bad I wasn't there the day they sold off all her possessions, because, they sent her to a concentration camp, which her husband runs. It is, and like the worst concentration. Not like, I don't know rank concentration camps, but to my understanding, Auschwitz has always been the worst one. This was based on the diary of Rudolf Haas, and how he sounded so ordinary while he was doing all these horrible things. He was executed, I believe, at Nuremberg in the later 40s, post World War II, as, most likely I think he should have been. The sound in this film is probably some of the most interesting sound design. I used to do a little sound design. I'm not going to act like I'm an expert or anything, but I used to be much more interested in that, and I think this is probably one of the more interested sound mixings that usually people claim Coen Brothers films, which I would agree with, but I'd say this is one of the best mixes I've heard in a long time, because that is entirely a character or a setting. I don't want to say a character, let's say the setting of the film, and the point of the film is that sound mix. So I would say either have headphones on, have a good sound system, because you need to hear that mix, because that is what you're ignoring. Like, you're ignoring death right outside their door. Right, they share a wall with Auschwitz, and while they're like having a pool party for their kids, they're seeing what's going on, and at night you can hear it louder as they're sleeping. It's a really probably one of the great sound mixes. I would honestly, I sound design is sort of a new medium. I think I'm only a few years younger than sound design, because modern sound design, I guess we all say, started with Apocalypse Now. With Walter Murch and stuff. I think I would actually love to hear what Walter Murch thinks of this, but I would say it is probably one of the more interesting, smart sound design films I've seen in like ever. I think it is an amazing sound design. I think there'll be books written about it, because the sound design is a form of protest. The sound design is the point of the film. Sure, you could say it's fairly obvious what he's doing, but at the same point you can hear it, and it bugs you and it gnaws at you, because you can hear, can you imagine living and you can hear a concentration camp? But if that is where you lived with your family and that is where you were set up, I think that is the thing that fucks with me with this film, is you do think of your own complicity and how you have to deal with these things going on right outside your door, these horrible things like a gunshot or a police siren, where's that going? And you have to sort of go about your day, but this is like the actual worst of the Holocaust right outside your door, and that is all done with sound design. I think the sound design, I'm not entirely sure who's credited for that, but I'm actually going to list, the names will be in front of me here because I think they deserve a mention. The performance by Christian Friedel and Sandra Huller are great, but I'd say this is much more of a, I think art cinema and European cinema, or film festival cinema, I guess, or whatever, where it really wants you to contemplate and think and meditate in this idea. And I do think that is certainly what's in vogue for what is considered a great movie, and that's totally cool. That's totally an interesting idea. I do think, and I thought this with Sandra Huller's other film, is could not have Law and Order an episode done that or could this have been in a short film? And I did sort of think that about it. But after I saw it, and the more I thought about it, the more I was like, I think I needed to see that the way it was. Like, I think that was the right way to do it. Yeah, you could have done it in a short film, but it isn't going to mean as much as this did. And I think you need to have it in there. I often think the thing with World War II, out of all the points in the 20th century, because it is such a focal point of film history and American film, and I think all of film probably, but specifically Hollywood and American film, is that, and I mean, it's a British film with Jonathan Glazer, who's, I think, made one of his most interesting directed films. Even apparently Spielberg said it was the best Holocaust film since Schindler's List. But I think how we view World War II says more about us than it says about World War II. And I've known that since, like, if you look at the beginning of the war, there is very rah, this is going to work out. If you watch a film from the end of the war, they're like, this is going on forever. What has my life become? This is depressing. And then when you look back on the war, there's sort of a fondness for it in the 40s. And as we keep cycling through it, everything from, more love for World War II to, like, what happened with Saving Private Ryan. And I think with this film, this is just as much about the Holocaust as it is how we ignore things now and how our government ignores things now and how the rich and powerful ignore things now. This is as much about that as it is about the Holocaust. This film, yeah, it could have happened in the 70s or the 80s, but it didn't. And the context of when it was released and when it was made has everything to do with what goes on now, and speaks loudly. As much as this is a quiet art film, it isn't. It's demanding you not ignore what's going on outside your door, and it's sad and it's scary, and you worry, because you worry what you have to ignore to sort of make your paycheck and make your payments and pay your rent and keep things going. And I think it would be very hard to watch this and go, I don't like to think about that depressing stuff. I don't want to do. And honestly, I put this off in a sense because, how much time do I have in a week? And like, I don't know. I felt guilty, but in the end, like, we are not the people who will feel the guilt about this are not the people who made the decision to let themselves succeed because of someone else's misfortune or death or the lack of us as all of humanity. And I think Zone of Interest brings that up, of the people who made that decision to profit in such a way, in such an evil, horrible way, and chose to not care about the people who they loved in their youth, who want those drapes or that fur coat or some bullshit like that. This is makes you think about living in our times and how we have to ignore these things to go on, but at the same point you see the people who set up the things that we have to ignore to go on. They set those things up so they can profit off of them and choose to ignore them because they are the ones who made them. And that is, as much as you should, we all feel guilty that these things happen and wish we could stop them. The people who started them almost have very little guilt at all. The people, any review brings up the banality of evil, but the most evil thing you can do, and I guess, what's that quote about, like, the devil making you feel everything is normal? I think a lot of the smartest thing the devil ever did was convince you he didn't exist. But what I would say is the most evil thing that anyone can do is make you think that evil is normal and that it's acceptable. And the fact that these people find this so acceptable, they he loves his family, he wants his family to succeed, he wants his wife to have that dream house. But to do it, how many people died at Auschwitz, and how many people will continue to suffer so someone can profit in such a way is just something that this film is almost entirely about. And living in that in such an interesting artistic way, I think it is probably one of the great protest films of our era, one of the smartest and most interesting made films, and it is all done in wides, and it is a contemplative, smart movie. And I think Jonathan Glazer, I've been watching his stuff since he made music videos, from Under the Skin, from Sexy Beast to this. This is a real masterclass of what you can do with your filmmaking skill and what you can say upon the world. And I think there are certain times you see someone make a great movie with all their skills. And I think, I don't know if I'll ever be able to stomach watching this again, but it's been a little bit since I watched it, and I don't think I can forget it. And I think having that idea planted in your brain and what the rich have created so they can walk off in their vacation homes. There's a lot of films who've tried to do this much more upfrontly, a lot more boringly, and you can almost feel the fakeness in it. But this shows you in such a matter-of-fact way you can't ignore how sad it is that all these people all they just want is to ignore the reason they have that nice house in the first place. Well, we all have to ignore it to hopefully have that nice house, which we won't, because they have set it up so they can succeed despite the fact that there's all this suffering right behind the wall. They'll just ignore the sound while it keeps going on and just succeed and revel in the fact that they have succeeded despite who they've destroyed to do so. And I think that is just an ultimate sad sign of what the real sense of evil is, and you kind of just have to sit back and sit in that and wonder and wish that wasn't the way it is. But I don't know, it's a hard thing to almost ignore while watching other people sadly ignore it. So if you've seen Zone of Interest and would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.